Alright, welcome back. So on the channel today is going to be a follow-up to my previous video where we pitted the 10mm 45 Super and 9mm using hard cast rounds and things of that nature for simulated dangerous game defense. We want to kind of see how they compared, and we had some pretty surprising results. So from the time period of when I filmed that to now, I came across a newer 9mm projectile that I think might do really well in this type of test. It is marketed as such, and I'm really curious to see how this performs. So the projectile in question is the G9 Defense 9mm plus P Woodsman. This is a 124 grain solid copper. It's rated at 1250 feet per second. We will do a chronograph check with our G34 here just to see, because I haven't fired this stuff yet, but it's a fairly interesting design. As you can see, it pretty well looks like a sharp-shouldered semi-wad cutter, and at the very end of the bullet you have sort of this little pointed tip. So I'm very curious to see how this projectile will perform in relation to not only the 10mm 220 grain hard cast, which you've already tested, so you have to watch the previous video to see how that shook out, but also the 9mm plus P plus penetrator from Buffalo Bore, the 124 grain full metal jacket flat nose, because this round did really well, surprisingly well actually. So since these are similar in mass, I'm very curious to see how this design shakes out. One of the things we noticed is, particularly with the 9mm, is the longer the projectile gets, the more tendency it has to want to destabilize and tumble, which then reduces penetration. With the 10mm and 45 Super, the nature of the design of those rounds, they're very flat nosed. They tend to want to stay more point forward. In the case of the 9mm plus P plus penetrator, we kind of saw that actually perform similarly. So we want to see if this design, being that it seems to be purpose built, how this shakes out. So what we're going to do, we're going to shoot it through the same test media we used last time, and I'll go ahead and show you that. And previous video, we already have our results to compare to, and depending on how this performs, whether this performs as well or better than the penetrator load from Buffalo Bore, we're going to then pit it against the 220 grain hard cast in a little bit lengthened test, if you would, just to see if we can get the bullets to completely run out of steam and see how that shakes out. But it all depends on what we get. So let me go ahead and show you the setup and get this going. All right, and here's our setup. We have our standard 1-gallon water jugs. These are approximately 6 inches thick. This is going to simulate sort of the muscle tissue, soft tissue, if you would. And what we have is one prior to our bone simulant. And the idea is that the round is penetrating through the soft tissue before it strikes the bone. And then we will see what kind of penetration we get once we pass through the bone. And what we'd like to see is if this simulant in the front causes the round to destabilize before it strikes a bone, which of course is then going to really degrade penetration. So that's one of the reasons for this being here. For our bone simulant, we have this 3/4 inch red oak, and this is some very hard, dense stuff, much harder and denser than what you typically see in something like a 2x4 or whatever your typical type materials there. And then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so 7 jugs total, 6 after our hard simulant, and then we have another 3/4 inch board backing up that. Sort of represent a far side. If you watched the last video, you pretty much know that I don't expect anything to get through this, but if we do see penetration all the way to this, then we know we have a good performing round, and we can move on to that comparison test afterward. We'll try to lengthen this more to see just how far we get. Based on the results we got last time, we want to at least see penetration of this 5th jug, because if we don't see penetration at least that far, then there's better performing rounds, at least in regards to how the tests shake out here. And some of the rounds we used in the last one, they do have real world feedback, so that kind of is a good baseline, I believe. And of course, I linked in the description of that video where you can actually get some real world feedback off of how that performed, along with photographs, penetration, so on and so forth and so forth. But before we do that, let's go ahead and get the chronograph results, as I haven't shot this round before, and at least see how it compares to what the box labels it as. And we'll just put a couple rounds over the chronograph, and just to get a general idea. Again, this is a Glock 34, so roughly a 5.3 inch barrel. 1,246, 1,252, and 1,236. We'll get an average on it, but looks like we're real close to the box velocity in this full-size handgun. All right, so we got 1252, 1246, and 1236, and our average was 1244, so we're right there at the listed velocity, which is 1,250 feet per second. So all right, let's see how it shakes out. And this will be the 124 grain plus P Woodsman from G9 Defense. All right, took a bath there. And here's our board, and you can see the hole, and you can actually see through it. So that shows that that sharp profile has an effect to cut a nice clean hole. But obviously, no issues penetrating that. Didn't figure there would be. And it looks like a clean hole in the front, so it didn't look like it was tumbling. Then we have jug 1, 2, 3. Some deviation kind of down into the left. 4, still down to the left. 5. This is actually jug 6 if we're counting the one in front. And we're in jug 6 after the board, jug 7 total, and we went all the way to the back of the jug, poked out, and it looks like we hit the table, and it's still in that jug. So we did get the full penetration, which is pretty darn good, especially for a lighter weight projectile and solid copper that's not going to break up if it hit, no matter what kind of bone it hits. But a little bit of deviation, but not as much as we saw with some of the other rounds. So yeah, not too bad. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and get this all set back up, and we're going to try to lengthen this out so we can get some comparison. And we're going to try the Woodsman one more time because I haven't seen any data on this round. So I want to see if we replicate that result. Let's go check it out. It looks like we hit a little bit to the left with that shot. Last time we had a little deviation that kind of went to the right. We went a little bit left, but it looks like we obviously, one thing I'm noticing, there's a lot of hydraulic pressure on that first jug. This looks more akin to what you usually see with hollow points. So just something to take note. Anyway, penetrate through our board, no issue. Jug 1 behind the board, so jug 2, 3, 4. We're staying on the left hand side, but it's penetrating fairly straight. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Exit jug 5 on the left hand side into 6, out the back of 6, in the 7, out the back of 7, and I feel a dent on 8. Let's see if we're in. I think we stopped in 7 and bounced off 8. Let's see. Yep. Okay, so we stopped at 7, all the way to the back, bounced off 8. And we have 11 jugs total lined up, including the one in front of the board. Our last test, we saw 8 jugs total of penetration, 1 in front of the board, 7 after. So this should hopefully give us a comparison. If anything's going to go through all of these, it should be the 10mm 220 grain hard cast. And we're launching this from a Dan Wesson Bruin, which I believe is about a 6.1 or 6 to 6.1 inch barrel, so similar to a Glock 40. Let's go see what we got. And something I want to show you guys, this was our jug from our 9mm tests, and this is jug 1 of our 10mm test. And you can see what I'm talking about with this 9mm, that particular loading, how that bullet's designed, how it definitely does cause some significant hydraulic pressure for a non-expanding projectile, because it actually sort of folded this out, flattened this out more than the 10mm, though the 10mm did destroy it. So let's go ahead and see if we can find this bullet. All right, so this was jug 1. Jug 2, which still has some significant damage, so that round's obviously still carrying a lot of energy. 3, 4, and trademark, we're seeing good straight line penetration. 5, 6, we're starting to go down a little bit after 6. 7, heading down a little bit. 8, down at the bottom of 8. 9, and it looks like, I think we hit the table It did not enter 9, and I don't hear it in 8. Let me recount this and make sure I'm counting this properly. Well, I have 2 left, so I said I had 11, so 9. 10, 9. Yeah, so it looks like we got similar penetration. Let me redo. I got to look at this again just to see if what I'm seeing is accurate. So during the filming with the 10mm, we had some battery issues. Camera died, audio died, and I lost count there trying to review footage, and my math was off. So in fact, we had 9 jugs of penetration with the 10mm. So the 10mm did exceed the 9mm projectile by 1 jug of penetration. So yeah, so 10mm for the win. Well, there you go, guys. I didn't really intend for this to be sort of a versus video. I just figure we'll see how this shakes out with the 9mm, because I just wanted to test it, and I figured I'd throw the 10mm back in there to try to get some points of comparison. I did expect more penetration out of the 10mm than we got. I thought it was going to make it all the way to the end of the setup I had when I added the extra jugs, but we actually saw similar penetration to what we saw with the 9mm. We could argue maybe a little bit more from the 10mm because we didn't find the projectile. Looks like it ended out on the ground somewhere. But I can tell you when it exited out, there was really nothing left. But with that said, we did see that good trademark straight line penetration. That is a good characteristic we see with the heavy hard cast 10mm rounds, and that is a good attribute to have for this type of application. So there is that aspect of it. As far as our G9 defense, 9mm plus B Woodsman, I have to say this is obviously it's a purpose-built round, and it's pretty interesting. We're getting very good penetration out of this, especially compared to, you know, what would be considered like sort of the king of autoloader penetration. Yeah, pretty darn good performance. And again, as I said, this does seem to show a lot of hydrostatic or hydraulic pressure. If we don't really like using that term, hydrostatic shock, because this isn't a rifle, but hydraulic pressure. You can see on the jug the way this is one of the jug. We did this twice, and this is the jug from actually the very first shot, and you can see, just like we saw before, it pretty much flattens this jug out. So definitely a lot of hydraulic pressure being caused by this design. Again, very sharp shouldered profile, and of course you can see there's no deformation whatsoever on this, so you're not going to have to worry about this breaking on bone or flattening out. And the sharp profile should help to minimize deflection if you're impacting things like a skull or something at an angle, which is another consideration to take into account with projectile design characteristics. Something the 10mm and 45 Super tend to have a little bit better characteristic for when we're dealing with the hard cast rounds is a flatter nose. For whatever reason, they're still making the 9mm with a little more rounded ogive there. I don't know if it's just to feed in older guns, but they could get with the times, because let's be real here, nobody's using this type of ammo in Lugers or something like that. But at any rate, this projectile though forgets all that, and it goes with a nice sharp profile, and it does seem to feed well. I noticed absolutely no hang-ups whatsoever on the feed ramp. It seems to glide right in without any issue, so that's something else to take note of as well. But did these results surprise you guys? It kind of surprised me. Again, I expected 10mm to show a measurable difference once we lengthened out the jugs, but it did show a little difference, but it was not what I expected to be, though again, good straight line penetration. So would I use this G9 defense plus P 124 grain Woodsman load to 9mm? Yeah, I would. What's the drawback to it? It's expensive. I will say that this is expensive ammo. So it's not something, you know, the hard cast rounds and whatnot are definitely more economically viable if you're going to buy in large quantity, but I don't really see these types of rounds being needed in large quantities. So if you're taking a trip up to Alaska or something, it's definitely something to check out. It might be well worth the added insurance, if you would. But yeah, so that's how that shook out. I know a lot of people like to say I'm a 9mm fanboy for whatever reason. I sure seem to spend an awful lot of money on 10mm for being a 9mm fanboy. And yes, I do love the damn Western Bruin. But I don't know, guys. The results are what they are. I would have confidence that both of these projectiles would be probably, in the context of handguns against large, dangerous game, I don't think this would be your primary concern. I think both of these have the potential to get the job done, and really it's just going to be a matter of you, honestly, being able to get the job done, and maybe a little bit of luck. So pretty good performance from our 9mm. Again, reliable performance out of our 10mm, but hey, there you go. Hope you guys enjoyed this. If you like this kind of content and you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe, share the video, helps the channel out. Let me know what you guys think about all this in the comments down below. As always, guys, I do appreciate your comments, but please keep the comments professional, and I'll see you guys next time.